Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the life of a peasant mother in medieval times, where each day starts before the sun even rises. You wake up to the sound of your children stirring, the distant crow of the rooster, and the constant creak of the wooden beams that hold your home together. The air is chilly, still carrying the remnants of night, and the smell of the earth fills your nose, rich with the scent of dew. You roll out of bed, maybe a mattress made of straw or just a pile of blankets on the floor, and get to work. There's no time to waste, no time for drowsiness or leisure. There's a family to care for, chores to be done, and if you're lucky, a bit of bread to eat. The first task of the day is lighting the fire, which, if it's a cold morning, can take far too long. The hearth, often central in the home, is both a source of warmth and the main cooking area. As you kneel down to stoke the fire, you hear the children's feet shuffling about, their small bodies tugging at the blanket for warmth. You glance out the small window. There's nothing beautiful to see, just the gray sky and the damp soil of your village. The real work begins as the house starts to wake. You'll feed the animals, probably a few chickens, maybe a goat, and start the process of making sure there's enough food to last the day. It's not glamorous, but this is your life. It's repetitive, tiresome, and sometimes lonely, but it's survival. You've learned to be quick, to multitask, to get things done before the day fully starts. Historians still debate whether medieval women in rural areas had enough time for personal reflection, or if they were so consumed by daily tasks that moments for themselves were non-existent. Some claim that women in the countryside had little more than work and family life, while others argue they carved out moments of peace amidst the chaos. Either way, your day has no time for such luxuries. The first task, after making sure the fire is going strong, is preparing breakfast for your family. You gather what little you have, perhaps some leftover porridge from yesterday, some stale bread, or a handful of dried herbs. If you're fortunate, there's some milk or butter from the cow that's been steadily fed over the course of the year. You scrape together whatever scraps are left from the previous day's meal and try to make something edible. Food is never plentiful, and what little you can serve up is far from satisfying. You might break an egg from the chickens if they've been laying, but you've learned not to expect too much. After all, the chickens don't care about your hunger. The meal isn't just about satisfying your stomach. It's about keeping the rhythm of the day going. You know your children will be hungry in a few hours, and your husband, if he's home, will want a bit of food before he heads off to work in the fields or in the village. The food is simple: stews, porridge, the occasional bread, and it is necessary to make sure everyone eats something before the day's work begins. As you serve up the food, you keep one eye on the fire, stirring a pot of water or stew. The children are already getting restless, and soon they'll be asking for their next meal, snacks, or anything that will fill the endless hole in their stomachs. And of course, you're constantly aware of how much is left, because food doesn't come easily. There are no stores to go to for a quick purchase. It's either grown, bartered for, or hunted down. You've learned how to stretch everything, from grains to vegetables, to make sure no one goes hungry for too long. Historians still debate whether the peasant diet of the medieval period was as meager and monotonous as commonly believed. Some argue that peasants had access to a wider variety of foods, depending on local resources, while others suggest that the food was indeed bland and repetitive, a reflection of the harsh conditions they lived under. Either way, breakfast was rarely a time for indulgence. Now that the morning meal has been served, the real work of managing your household begins. You clean the remnants of the meal, gather the dirty dishes, and prepare for the tasks ahead. The stone house, dark and cramped, demands constant care. The floor is hard, the walls are cold, and the air is damp. You grab your broom and start sweeping, making sure the debris of the day doesn't pile up. Every corner of the house, from the hearth to the window ledge, needs attention, and no matter how much you clean, there's always something that needs doing. The house is never truly clean. The chores seem endless: sweeping, scrubbing, mending clothes, and keeping the hearth stoked with firewood. The work is physical, and your muscles ache before you've even finished breakfast. Even though your hands are sore, your feet tired, and your back sore from bending over, you know it's necessary to keep the household running. Your children have already begun their tasks. Older ones are feeding the animals, and the younger ones are gathering sticks for the fire or fetching water from the village well. The entire family, young and old, works together in a shared rhythm, and though it can be exhausting, it's the only way life works. While you work, you hear the sounds of life outside: animals bleating, the occasional shout from the neighbors. You know your day will be full of labor, but it's a constant cycle. As much as you're dedicated to your household, you must also be mindful of the community. You are bound by custom and by the reality that you can't live in isolation. You are not just a mother in the home. You are an integral part of the village, bound by the same duties and responsibilities as the rest of your neighbors. Historians still argue whether medieval women in rural areas were primarily responsible for maintaining the home and managing the household economy, or whether there was more of a partnership with their husbands. Some argue that women's work in the home was the backbone of medieval life, while others suggest that the men played a far more central role. Either way, your role is clear. Manage the home, care for the family, and ensure that the work is done. Once the household is in order, your next task involves heading outside, where you might need to gather firewood, forage for herbs, or tend to the garden. If you're lucky enough to have a small plot of land, you'll tend to it now, ensuring the crops are growing and the weeds are kept at bay. The fields outside the house are where much of the food comes from, though it's not always enough to feed the family. You rely on what grows: cabbage, peas, beans, and perhaps a few fruit trees if the seasons are kind. The work is tiring, but you do it with the knowledge that it is a crucial part of your daily survival. You pick through the earth with your bare hands, sometimes feeling the sting of blisters, but you press on because you know the reward will be worth it. The sun beats down on your back, and you wipe the sweat from your brow, watching the chickens scatter at the sound of a crow or a hawk in the distance. The world outside is as much a part of you as the house you live in. The seasons come and go, bringing their own challenges and joys. If you have animals to care for, such as goats or cows, you'll need to tend to them too. Fetching water from the well is another task that can never be avoided. No matter how many times you've done it, the chore never gets easier. The weight of the water jug presses down on your shoulders, and the long walk to the well seems endless. But it's necessary for the family to have clean water to drink and cook with. Historians still argue about the role of agriculture in medieval rural life. Some suggest that peasants relied primarily on subsistence farming, growing just enough to feed their families, while others claim that rural areas were more productive and had surpluses for trade. Either way, you are constantly reminded that nature, the land, and the weather have the final say in your family's survival. Once the work outside is done, you may have time to socialize, but don't mistake this for a break. Life as a peasant mother is often a community affair, and the bonds between neighbors are as important as the work itself. The daily rhythms of life in your village or hamlet are dictated by shared responsibilities and mutual support. Whether it's assisting each other with the harvest, helping to raise each other's children, or simply swapping goods in exchange for what one doesn't have. Community cooperation is essential. You may visit the neighbor's house to help with bread making or carry a basket of herbs to a friend who needs them for a remedy. Children play together in the dirt, creating imaginary worlds while the adults converse or work side by side. If there is a celebration, perhaps a wedding or a feast day, you and your family will join the festivities. The communal celebrations are often one of the few moments of true relaxation in a peasant's life. There's music, dancing, and food to share. But even then, there's an understanding that these occasions are fleeting, and life quickly returns to its demands. Socializing among the peasant class is also deeply tied to religion. You attend church regularly, where the priest leads services, and the liturgical calendar dictates much of your life. Major feasts and fasts mark the passing of the seasons. If you're lucky, you might catch a glimpse of the local lord or some traveling merchants, though their presence feels distant, a reminder of the social divide that separates you from those in power. Even so, you take comfort in your faith, as it provides structure and meaning in your otherwise grueling life. Historians still argue whether medieval peasant communities were more tightly knit, or if there was a more rigid divide between social classes, with little true interaction between the different strata. Some believe the communal nature of village life created strong support networks, while others argue that peasants were more isolated, their lives dominated by the needs of the land and their lords. As the seasons change, so too does the rhythm of your work. The arrival of each season brings with it new challenges and tasks. Spring is a time for planting, when the soil is tilled and seeds are sown. You and your family work quickly in the fresh, damp earth, often racing against the clock before the rains arrive. The weather is unpredictable, and while rain is needed for the crops to grow, it can also make the land difficult to work. You learn to read the sky, when to plant, when to wait, and when to gather what little you have. In summer, the work intensifies. The sun is relentless, and long days are spent tending to the crops, mending fences, and ensuring the animals have enough water. The heat makes everything feel sluggish, and there are times when it seems like the entire world is sweltering under the same unyielding sun. But you press on, driven by the hope that the harvest will be good. The work can feel endless, tending to the fields, caring for children, gathering firewood, and preparing food. Your body aches, but there's little time to rest. Autumn brings the harvest, a time both of relief and anxiety. While it's rewarding to reap what you've sown, the harvest is also a time of uncertainty. Will the weather have been kind? Did the crops grow strong enough to sustain the family through the long winter? There's a sense of urgency in the air as you and your family gather everything you can and prepare for the lean months ahead. You also begin to preserve food, salting meat, drying fruit, and storing grains, hoping it will be enough to get you through the cold months when food is scarce. Winter is the hardest season. The days are short, the cold is biting, and the work slows down, but that doesn't mean there's rest. There's still firewood to be gathered, animals to be cared for, and food to be rationed. The cold settles into your bones, and the darkness lingers longer, making the days feel heavier. If the winter is harsh, you may not be able to keep up with the demands of the land. The food stores dwindle, and the warmth of the fire is no longer enough to keep out the chill of winter's grip. Historians still debate how much of a peasant's life was dictated by the seasons, and how much was shaped by the demands of their lords and the economy. Some suggest that rural life was largely governed by nature's cycles, while others argue that the influence of the feudal system made the work and rhythms of life more rigid and controlled. Family is the backbone of your life, as it is for most peasants. It's not just a matter of love and affection, it's about survival. Your family works together in every sense. From dawn until dusk, your time is spent working alongside your husband, children, and sometimes extended family. In the evenings, after a long day of labor, you share a meal of whatever you've managed to gather or grow, often supplemented by bread or a meager portion of salted meat. Your role as a mother is central. You bear children, raise them, and train them in the ways of life as a peasant. Children are not coddled. They are taught from a young age how to contribute to the household. Your eldest daughter may help with chores like grinding grain or tending the fire, while your sons might assist in tending the livestock or learning how to plow the land. It's a practical education, one that leaves little room for personal dreams, as every moment of your life is geared towards sustaining the family and making sure there's enough food to last. Marriage, too, plays a functional role. Love may exist, but survival is the primary concern. A marriage is often a partnership for labor and survival, especially in rural areas where resources are scarce. The work is demanding, and both husband and wife must pull their weight to ensure the household runs smoothly. Your husband works in the fields, builds necessary structures, and sometimes participates in local governance or trades, but you are responsible for the majority of domestic duties, including cooking, cleaning, and tending to the children. Despite the hardships, there is joy in the family. The birth of a child is a celebrated event, though it can also bring fear. There's a high rate of infant mortality, and a mother's role in ensuring the health of her children becomes even more significant. You take comfort in the small moments, shared meals, stories told by firelight, and the laughter of children as they play together. But these moments are fleeting, and you are constantly aware that your family's survival is contingent on a delicate balance of hard work and good fortune. Historians still debate the nature of medieval family life. Some suggest that the family unit was much tighter in rural areas, with close-knit communities and shared resources, while others argue that the feudal system created a more rigid family structure, one that operated under the dictates of landlords and lords. Regardless, family remains the cornerstone of the peasant's existence. Religion plays a monumental role in your daily life. It's woven into every action you take, every step you make. You are expected to attend Mass regularly and observe the feast days and fasts that the Church has prescribed. These rituals, though often repetitive, are your connection to a higher power, a power that can either bless your fields or send you into ruin. If the harvest fails, it's the result of divine will. If the animals thrive, it's a sign of favor from above. The Church itself is a powerful institution, not just a place of worship, but the center of life in the village. The priest, often one of the only educated people in your community, wields significant influence. He is the one who interprets the will of God, performs the sacraments, and offers guidance in both spiritual and everyday matters. Your life, your actions, and your survival are all shaped by the rhythms of the liturgical calendar. It is this very rhythm that dictates when you plant, when you harvest, and when you celebrate. Even the most mundane task, like washing clothes or tending to the fields, is seen as an act of devotion when performed with the right intent. Every major event, birth, marriage, death, requires the blessing of the Church. You baptize your children to ensure their souls are cleansed, and you pray for them as they grow, hoping that they, too, will live according to the will of God. You marry under the gaze of the Church, binding your family together not just in law, but in the eyes of God. You know that the afterlife is as real as the world you live in, and that the decisions you make today, whether to be kind to your neighbor or to share your bread, will be counted in your favor when you stand before God. However, This unwavering belief in the divine doesn't come without its tensions. The Church holds immense power over your life, but it also serves as a reminder of the rigid social hierarchy in which you are trapped. While the priest tells you that you are equal in the eyes of God, your daily life is a reminder that you are far from equal to the nobility. The wealth of the Church itself stands in stark contrast to the lives of peasants like you. And yet, religion also provides comfort. It assures you that your hardships have meaning, that your suffering has a purpose, and that someday, if you endure, you will be rewarded in heaven. Historians still argue whether the medieval church was an institution of liberation or oppression. Some believe that the church offered peasants a form of spiritual solace and community that made the hardships of life bearable. Others argue that the church's influence reinforced a rigid class system, keeping the lower classes in their place by promising them rewards in the afterlife, rather than offering tangible improvements to their earthly lives. As the seasons change, so does the rhythm of your life. The harvest season is perhaps the most pivotal time of the year, dictating whether your family will survive the winter or struggle to make ends meet. The work is grueling and long, days spent under the hot sun, bending over fields of wheat, barley, or oats. You and your children labor together, pulling up the crops, and often your husband will work alongside the village men, reaping the fruits of the season. Despite the hard work, there's a sense of unity in the harvest. The entire village comes together, each family contributing to the labor. While the harvest may bring a sense of accomplishment, it is also fraught with stress. You are always aware that a bad harvest can ruin everything. A sudden frost, a plague of locusts, or even an unexpected storm can wipe out the year's crop and leave your family starving. When the harvest is good, there is a brief moment of relief, but it is always tempered by the knowledge that much of the food will go to pay the taxes owed to your Lord. While you may get a small portion to feed your family, the majority of the crops are shipped off to the manor, leaving you with only enough to last a few months. What remains after the harvest must be carefully stored, keeping the grain dry and free from pests, as even a small mistake could result in famine. The work is unrelenting, and the family's survival is tied to every seed planted and every crop harvested. The physical strain is harsh, but even worse is the emotional toll. You know that much of your life's work depends on forces beyond your control, and that at any moment disaster can strike. You might have your harvest, but you never have true security. Every year feels like a gamble. Historians still debate whether the medieval peasants' hard work was part of a larger system of agrarian prosperity, or if it was simply the result of a feudal system designed to benefit the wealthy. Some suggest that the agricultural methods of the time were sophisticated, leading to a period of growth for Europe. Others argue that the hardships endured by peasants, especially those related to crop failure, led to the gradual erosion of the system and ultimately revolts. When a new life enters your home, it's not just a joyous occasion, though there is joy in it for sure. The birth of a child is a moment of profound significance, not just for you as a mother, but for the entire community. It is a miracle that comes with its own set of rules and rituals, many of which revolve around the church. You know that your baby must be baptized soon after birth, as the church teaches that a child cannot enter heaven without this sacrament. The birth itself is often an exhausting and dangerous process. If you're lucky, a midwife will be present, perhaps even one who has helped in the births of many children in the village. She might have a few herbs to ease the pain, or a few methods passed down through generations, but no real medical knowledge. Births are often attended by women, and perhaps a few close relatives, but the father is typically kept at a distance. After all, childbirth is women's work, and a man's role is to provide and protect, not to participate in such intimate moments. Once the child is born, you clean them, wrap them in a cloth, and then wait for the priest to arrive. He will perform the baptism, anointing the baby with holy water and giving them their Christian name, while reciting prayers to cleanse the child of original sin. The ceremony itself is brief, but it's essential. Without this ritual, your child's soul is believed to be in limbo, neither in heaven nor on earth. After the baptism, there's a period of quiet celebration in the home. You might receive visits from neighbors, each bringing a small gift for the baby or a little food to celebrate. But despite the celebrations, there's always the worry in the back of your mind. The life of a peasant is full of uncertainties, disease, famine, and the harsh realities of survival. Even though your child has received the protection of the church, there's no guarantee that they will grow up healthy or safe. As your child grows, you begin to train them in the ways of your life, just as your parents did for you. Whether it's teaching them to help with the harvest, work with wool, or care for the animals, they will soon become a part of the family's labor force. Childhood is short, and in the medieval world, there's little time for play. Instead, your children must grow up quickly and learn the ways of the world in order to survive. Historians still debate the extent to which childbirth and child-rearing were shaped by religious teachings versus traditional practices. Some argue that the Church's influence on these practices helped to formalize the roles of women in family life, while others suggest that medieval mothers had their own ways of coping with birth and raising children, regardless of religious directives. In a life where survival is often precarious, illness is the specter that haunts every family. The slightest cough or fever could lead to days of suffering and, sometimes, death. As a mother, you worry over every small ailment your children suffer from, knowing that there are no guaranteed cures. Medicine is rudimentary at best. Most of the time, remedies are based on ancient beliefs, folk knowledge, and religious rites, rather than any scientific understanding of disease. When a sickness strikes, you might turn to a healer, who could be a local wise woman or perhaps a member of the clergy with rudimentary medical training. The healer's practice is a blend of spiritual and physical treatment, as they believe illness comes from both natural causes and supernatural forces. The first remedy is often a prayer, asking for divine intervention, followed by a potion made from herbs, roots, or animal parts. You might be given a handful of willow bark for pain, or a concoction made from honey and vinegar to treat a sore throat. However, for more serious illnesses, the options are limited. If one of your children falls ill with a fever or an infection, you have little recourse beyond keeping them hydrated and praying for their recovery. The death of a child, especially in the first few years of life, is tragically common. As much as you try to care for your little ones, there's no escaping the fact that medieval life is often fraught with danger and disease. Even something as simple as a common cold could turn deadly. Hospitals, as we know them today, are a far-off dream. Instead, the sick are often cared for in their homes or in small parish infirmaries. The church is sometimes involved in caring for the poor and the sick, providing some level of comfort and prayer, but resources are few. The idea of quarantine or hygiene is foreign. If a disease spreads, the community might offer its best guesses for what caused it: an evil spirit, a curse, or bad air, and try to contain it through superstition. Historians still argue whether the limited medical knowledge of the time was purely a result of religious dominance, or whether it was simply the constraints of the period. Some believe that the Church's control over medical practices stifled scientific progress, while others argue that medieval healers did the best they could with the resources available to them. Either way, the lack of effective treatment meant that illness was a constant threat to families, especially in rural areas where medical help was scarce. Your life as a peasant mother is defined by work. From the moment the sun rises to the moment it sets, there is little respite. If you are lucky, you have some help around the house, perhaps from your children, your husband, or a neighboring woman. But often you are alone in your daily labor. The work never ends, and its demands are unrelenting. In the fields, you spend long hours tending to crops, pulling weeds, and planting the seeds that will sustain your family. Maize, barley, rye, these are the lifeblood of the medieval diet, and their cultivation is a constant cycle of sowing and harvesting. In between, you might gather herbs, tend to the livestock, or even mend the clothes of your family. The physical toll is immense, and yet you bear it with a sense of duty, because without your efforts, survival would be uncertain. When your child is old enough, they too will begin to help, learning the rhythms of farming, cooking, and household maintenance. There is no time for play, no room for idleness. Life is about surviving, about ensuring that there is enough food, enough shelter, and enough warmth to make it through the seasons. While your children are growing, they are also working, contributing to the household as best they can. At the same time, motherhood requires you to keep a home that is both functional and comforting. You prepare meals, which are simple by today's standards, but no less important. Bread, pottage, and a little meat if you are fortunate, often flavored with the herbs and spices you grow yourself. You also keep your home clean, sweeping the floors, mending the roof, and making sure the hearth is kept alive. If illness strikes, you nurse your family with the herbs you've gathered and the knowledge passed down through generations. Historians still debate whether medieval motherhood was a role of complete subjugation, or if it was one of subtle power. Some argue that mothers were the backbone of the family, wielding quiet authority in the home. Others suggest that the harshness of medieval life left little room for maternal influence, with societal structures and the church deeply controlling every aspect of family life. Either way, there's no denying that as a peasant mother, your life was a balancing act between survival and devotion, a constant push to ensure your children grow strong, your crops grow tall, and your family endures another day. As exhausting and demanding as life is, there are moments, however brief, of respite. The festivals of the year offer you a chance to step away from the daily grind, to rest, to celebrate, and to be part of something larger than yourself. These festivals, marked by the church and local traditions, punctuate the cycle of the seasons and offer a temporary escape from the ceaseless work. The most important festivals are those of the church, Christmas, Easter, and the feast days of saints. These are the days when the community comes together for Mass, when the church bells ring in celebration, and when everyone, from the poorest to the wealthiest, participates in the sacred rituals. On these days, there is food, sometimes meat, sometimes fish, more than usual. You might even receive a special treat, such as a pie or a loaf of bread, made just for the occasion. The children dress in their best clothes, and there is a brief sense of joy and unity. But even outside the church's calendar, there are other celebrations that mark the passage of time. Harvest festivals are the most anticipated, for they signify the success or failure of the year's crops. If the harvest is plentiful, there is singing, dancing, and feasting, though if it's meager, the mood is much more somber. You gather with neighbors to share in the bounty, offering thanks to God and to the earth for what you've been given, knowing that your survival depends on the coming months. In the summer, there might be a celebration of St. John, with bonfires lit in the village square. People dance around the fires, wearing garlands of flowers, celebrating the sun and the warmth of the season. There are stories shared, laughter heard, and for just a moment, the relentless pace of daily life slows. Historians still debate whether these festivals were purely religious in nature, or if they also served a deeper social function. Some believe they were essential to maintain social cohesion, offering communities a chance to bond and set aside their work. Others argue that the church used the festivals to reinforce its dominance, making religion an integral part of every aspect of life. Either way, these moments of celebration were essential, offering a reprieve from the hardships of peasant life. While festivals offer brief moments of joy, the shadow of death is never far away in medieval life. It is a constant companion, woven into the fabric of your daily existence. life expectancy is low, and sickness, famine, and accidents claim lives far too early. The high infant mortality rate is especially heartbreaking. Many children born to peasant families do not live to see their 5th birthday. Even as you strive to keep your family healthy, you know that life is fragile. Diseases like the plague, smallpox, and dysentery ravage populations, and medicine is rudimentary at best. The best you can do is rely on herbal remedies, charms, and prayers. Doctors, if you can afford one, might recommend bloodletting or leeches, which are just as likely to harm as they are to help. Still, the threat of disease looms large, and it's often not a matter of if, but when it will strike. When it does, the fear is palpable. Neighbors fall ill, and entire families are swept away in a matter of days. You might take in their children, trying to fill the gap left by death, but the cycle continues. Even more frightening is the ever-present threat of war. As a peasant, you are at the mercy of the local lord, who may call upon your services to fight in his battles. Whether defending the realm or expanding his land, you have little choice but to follow orders. If war comes to your doorstep, you must flee, hide, or fight. Your home, your livelihood, can be destroyed in an instant. The shadow of death is also tied to the heavy toll that manual labor takes on your body. The constant strain of farming, lifting, building, and carrying over many years wears you down, leaving your body weak and brittle. Back pain, joint issues, and chronic exhaustion are common afflictions for peasants, and even a minor injury can become a death sentence without proper care. This is the price of a life lived under the unrelenting weight of survival. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants had a more intimate relationship with death, given the high mortality rates and the harshness of life. Some believe that death was so commonplace that it was no longer feared, just accepted. Others suggest that given the prevalence of religion and the belief in an afterlife, death might have been seen as a passage to a better world, providing some comfort amid the hardships. Whatever the case, it's clear that for medieval peasants, death was always lurking just beyond the horizon. As death hovers close by, so too does the cyclical nature of life. Birth, growth, marriage, parenthood, and death. These are the inescapable rhythms that govern every peasant's existence. Though your life might seem small and insignificant, it is part of a much larger cycle, one that stretches back centuries and will continue for centuries to come. Your parents raised you to follow in their footsteps, to work the land, to bear children, and to provide for the next generation. Their hopes, their struggles, and their lessons live on in you, just as yours will live on in your children. Marriage, though often arranged for economic reasons, marks a major turning point in your life. It is a union, not just of love, but of labor. The bond between husband and wife is built on mutual dependence. Together, you can work the land, raise children, and make a life. The duties of parenthood follow naturally. You raise your children in the same way you were raised, teaching them the same skills, passing down the same traditions. They, in turn, will carry on this cycle, ensuring that your family line continues long after you are gone. The future, however, holds no guarantees. The unpredictability of life is one of the few constants. A good harvest, a marriageable daughter, a successful trade. These are all fleeting successes that can be swept away by war, famine, or illness. The future is always uncertain, and yet, as a peasant, you have no choice but to look forward with hope, even as you live in the shadows of past generations. The survival of your family, your village, and your way of life depends on this. Your children are your legacy, the ones who will carry your name and memory into the future. Historians still argue whether the medieval peasantry had a sense of agency in shaping their own futures. Some suggest that peasants were more passive, resigned to their lot in life, while others argue that they held a deep sense of agency in ensuring the survival of their family and community. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. While your life may not have been easy, and your choices may have been limited, your work, your family, and your traditions were the foundation upon which the future was built. Through your labor and devotion, you helped sustain the very fabric of society. Even as your body grows weary and your time on this earth wanes, you leave behind something far greater than yourself. A lineage, a legacy, and the cycle of life that will continue long after your death. As the years pass, the legacy of a peasant mother's life is not measured by monuments or grand achievements, but in the continuity of the family. The fabric of society may be sewn with the hands of kings and lords, but it is the humble peasants who provide the foundation upon which the kingdom stands. In the quiet rhythms of daily work, in the care given to children, in the planting of seeds and the gathering of harvests, the true strength of a society resides. The legacy of your life will be found not in the lands you own or the riches you amass, but in the generations you nurture. Your children will take up your mantle, carrying with them the lessons you've taught them: how to grow food, how to care for animals, how to keep the household running. You pass on skills and traditions, but also values: how to be a good neighbor, how to endure hardship, how to work for the common good. Your legacy is woven into the very fabric of your family and community. As you grow older, the weight of labor takes its toll. Your hands, once nimble, are now stiff and calloused. Your back aches, and your steps are slower. Yet, even as your body weakens, your role remains unchanged. You continue to work, to care for your family, to see to their needs, all while quietly passing on your wisdom. In the evening, you sit by the fire with your children, telling stories of ancestors long gone. They listen, captivated by tales of lives lived in simpler times, unaware that one day their own children will listen to these same stories, passed down through the generations. Historians still debate whether the medieval peasantry truly had a sense of fulfillment in their lives. Was it the satisfaction of a job well done, or the love of family and community that kept them going. Some suggest that peasants found joy in the quiet moments of life, while others believe that the burden of their labor left little room for happiness. Whatever the case, it is clear that the peasant mother's legacy was vital to the survival of the medieval world. It was her labor, her care, and her resilience that ensured the survival of her family, and, by extension, society itself. As you enter the twilight years of your life, the days blur into one another. The fields that once felt like endless stretches of land now seem smaller. The rows of crops you've tended no longer as vital. Your body, once strong and resilient, now speaks of a lifetime of work, aching joints, tired muscles, and a heart that has weathered the storms of life. Yet, in this weariness, there is a deep, unspoken satisfaction. You've lived through the trials, the tribulations, and the joys, and now your role as the matriarch has shifted. But it is no less important. The days are still filled with work, though the nature of it changes. You may no longer toil in the fields as you once did, but your wisdom is sought after. You pass on the knowledge that has been passed to you, how to weave, how to prepare meals, how to care for the sick. You guide your children, now grown, and their children, teaching them the ways of life that have sustained your family for generations. The seasons come and go, and with each harvest, the cycle of life continues, even as you sense your own place in it, drawing to a close. As the years wear on, the quiet rhythms of life remain unchanged. The sound of the rooster's crow in the morning, the smell of fresh bread baking, the sight of children playing in the fields. These simple things bring comfort in the knowledge that life, in all its struggles, will continue. You've raised your children to carry on the traditions and values that have been handed down through the centuries, and they, in turn, will pass them on to their own children. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants had a true understanding of the passage of time and the inevitability of death. Did they live in the moment, immersed in the labor of their daily lives, or did they always feel the weight of time slipping away? Some suggest that peasants had a more cyclical view of life, seeing death as just another part of the natural order. Others argue that the harsh realities of their existence left little room for contemplation of such things. Regardless, one thing is clear. The life of a peasant mother, like the crops she tended and the seasons that passed, was part of a greater, unbroken cycle that continued long after her. And so, as the final years of your life pass quietly by, you find comfort in the knowledge that your legacy lives on. You have nurtured your family, guided them through the harshest of times, and provided them with the tools to thrive. Though you may never see the fruits of their labor, or witness the continuation of your family line, you know that the cycle you've lived through will continue in their hands. As you sit in the quiet of your home, surrounded by your children and grandchildren, You know that life will go on. The world will change, the seasons will shift, and new generations will rise. But for now, you can rest, knowing that you've done your part. Your work is done, your family is secure, and the cycle continues, just as it has for generations before you.